The ancient clock tower chimed midnight, its deep, resonant tones echoing through the cavernous halls of the Arkham Public Library. Jacob Wilder, the night librarian, looked up from his desk, his thin fingers pausing over the yellowed card catalog he'd been meticulously updating. The sound always sent a shiver down his spine, as if those 12 solemn rings were an incantation, ushering in the witching hour when the veil between worlds grew thin. Jacob pushed his wire-rimmed glasses up the bridge of his nose and surveyed the dimly lit main hall. Row upon row of towering bookshelves stretched into the gloom, their contents hidden in shadow. The air hung heavy with the musty scent of old paper and leather bindings, a perfume that Jacob had come to associate with home more than any other place in his solitary life. At 42, Jacob had spent more than half his life within these walls. The library had been his sanctuary since childhood, a place where he could lose himself in the worlds contained within the countless volumes that surrounded him. Now, as the night librarian, he was the guardian of this repository of knowledge, keeper of secrets both mundane and arcane. He rose from his chair, wincing at the crack of his stiff joints. Another night of inventory lay ahead, a task that would have seemed tedious to most, but filled Jacob with a quiet excitement. Each book was a mystery waiting to be cataloged, a piece of history to be preserved. Grabbing his antique brass lamp, Jacob made his way deeper into the library. The flickering flame cast dancing shadows on the walls, making the busts of long-dead authors seem to come alive, their empty eyes following his progress. He'd long ago memorized the layout of the main floors, but tonight his steps took him to a seldom-visited annex in the library's east wing. The annex was a relatively recent addition to the library, built in the 1920s to house a collection of rare books donated by a reclusive scholar. Jacob had always felt a strange unease in this section, as if the very air was charged with an otherworldly energy. He attributed it to the unique nature of the books stored here, esoteric tomes on forgotten religions, obscure scientific treatises, and leather-bound journals filled with the ravings of madmen. As he moved down the narrow aisle between the shelves, Jacob's lamp illuminated titles that would have sent shivers down the spines of more superstitious men. Kult de Ghoul, De Vermis Mysteries, Unaussprechlichen Kulten, books whispered about in academic circles but rarely seen outside of private collections. It was then, as he reached the end of the aisle, that Jacob noticed something odd. A faint draft caressed his cheek, carrying with it a scent he couldn't quite place, something ancient and vaguely sweet, like the perfume of a flower that bloomed only in darkness. He frowned, knowing every nook and cranny of the library as intimately as he knew his own home. There shouldn't be any draft here, deep in the bowels of the building. Holding his lamp higher, Jacob examined the bookshelf before him. At first glance, it appeared no different from the others, packed tightly with leather-bound volumes. But as he ran his hand along the edge of the shelf, he felt it, a slight give, almost imperceptible. His heart quickened as he pressed harder. With a soft groan of protesting wood, the entire shelf swung inward, revealing a hidden doorway behind it. Jacob stood transfixed, his mind reeling at the implications. How long had this secret entrance been here, undiscovered? What lay beyond? The doorway opened onto a narrow, winding staircase that descended into darkness. The steps were worn smooth by the passage of countless feet, yet a thick layer of dust suggested that no one had tread this path in many years. Jacob hesitated for only a moment before his curiosity overcame his trepidation. Holding his lamp before him, he began to descend. The air grew colder with each step, and Jacob pulled his cardigan tighter around his thin frame. The staircase seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into the earth far deeper than he thought possible. Just as he was about to turn back, convinced he'd made a mistake, the stairs ended abruptly at another door. This door was unlike any Jacob had ever seen. It was made of a dark, almost black wood that seemed to absorb the light from his lamp. Intricate carvings covered its surface, symbols and glyphs from languages long dead, twisting into patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked at them too long. At the center of the door was a large, tarnished bronze lock, green with age. Jacob's hand trembled as he reached for the handle. To his surprise, the door swung open at his touch, as if it had been waiting for him all this time. The hinges creaked in protest, the sound echoing in the stillness, like the groan of some great beast awakening from millennia of slumber. Beyond the threshold lay a vast chamber that defied all logic and reason. It stretched farther than the beam of his lamp could penetrate, its dimensions seeming to shift and warp at the edges of his vision. Row upon row of bookshelves filled the space, each one reaching impossibly high, disappearing into the gloom above. But it was the books themselves that truly caught Jacob's attention. They were like no volumes he had ever encountered in his years as a librarian. Some were bound in materials he couldn't identify, leathers of unknown beasts, metals that gleamed with an inner light, and substances that seemed to pulse and writhe beneath his gaze. Others appeared to be made of more conventional materials, but their sizes and shapes defied convention, ranging from tomes larger than a man to tiny, intricate things. As Jacob took his first tentative steps into the chamber, he felt a change come over him. The air here was thick with an otherworldly energy that seemed to seep into his very being. His senses sharpened, and he became acutely aware of the weight of time and knowledge pressing down upon him. He approached the nearest shelf, drawn by an impulse he couldn't explain. His fingers brushed against the spine of a book bound in what looked like human skin, its title written in characters that shifted and changed even as he tried to read them. With a mixture of reverence and fear, Jacob carefully pulled the book from the shelf. As he opened it, a wave of vertigo washed over him. The pages were filled with writing in 100 different hands, some in languages he recognized, others in scripts that no human tongue had ever uttered. But it was the content that truly shook him to his core. The book contained detailed accounts of events that had yet to occur: wars, natural disasters, technological marvels, all described with a clarity and precision that left no doubt as to their veracity. Jacob's mind reeled as he flipped through the pages, each one revealing more of a future that both thrilled and terrified him. He snapped the book shut, his breath coming in short gasps. This was impossible, beyond the realm of rational thought. Yet he couldn't deny the evidence of his own eyes. With trembling hands, he returned the book to its place and moved deeper into the chamber. Hours passed like minutes as Jacob explored the hidden library. He discovered volumes that contained the life stories of people yet to be born, treatises on sciences that wouldn't be discovered for centuries, and philosophical works that challenged the very nature of reality itself. Each book he touched seemed to impart a fragment of its knowledge directly into his mind, bypassing the need for reading or comprehension. It was only when he came across a small, unassuming leather-bound journal that Jacob truly understood the magnitude of his discovery. The name embossed on the cover in fading gold leaf was his own: Jacob Wilder. With a sense of both anticipation and dread, he opened the journal. Inside, he found a detailed account of his entire life, from his birth to the very moment he had entered this hidden chamber. But it didn't stop there. The pages continued, describing events yet to come. His future laid bare before him. Jacob's hands shook as he read about the triumphs and tragedies that awaited him, the joys and sorrows that would shape the remainder of his days. He saw the moment of his death, described in such vivid detail that he could almost feel the cold hand of mortality upon him. As he neared the end of the journal, Jacob's eye caught a passage that made his blood run cold. And so, on this night, Jacob Wilder discovers the true nature of the Midnight Library, unaware that in doing so, he has sealed his fate. For knowledge comes at a price, and those who seek to know the future are doomed to be consumed by it. From this moment forward, Jacob's life is no longer his own, but belongs to the library, a willing slave to the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. Jacob slammed the book shut, his mind reeling from the implications. He looked around the vast chamber with new eyes, suddenly aware of the malevolent presence that seemed to permeate every shadow. The books on the shelves whispered to him, promising secrets beyond imagining if only he would stay, read, learn. With a supreme effort of will, Jacob turned and fled towards the entrance. But as he reached the doorway, he found it had vanished, replaced by yet another bookshelf. Panic rising in his throat, he spun around trying to get his bearings. But the layout of the chamber had changed. The shelves seemed to stretch and twist, forming an endless labyrinth of knowledge from which there was no escape. As the realization of his predicament sank in, Jacob felt a strange calm settle over him. He understood now that he had always been destined for this moment, that his entire life had been leading him to this discovery. The Midnight Library had called to him, and he had answered. With a mix of resignation and anticipation, Jacob Wilder picked up another book and began to read. The clock tower above chimed again, marking the passage of another hour, but in the depths of the hidden library, time had lost all meaning. Jacob had become one with the eternal midnight, a guardian of secrets that no mortal was meant to know. And so began Jacob's new existence, forever trapped in the Midnight Library, his fate intertwined with the forbidden knowledge contained within its endless shelves. Little did he know that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge his sanity, his understanding of reality, and the very fabric of existence itself. Time had lost all meaning for Jacob Wilder in the depths of the Midnight Library. What felt like days or perhaps weeks had passed since he had first stumbled upon this impossible place, though he knew that in the world above, it might have been mere hours. The soft glow of his brass lamp had long since faded, replaced by an eerie, pulsating light that seemed to emanate from the very books themselves. Jacob's once pristine clothes were now tattered and stained, his wire-rimmed glasses cracked and hanging askew on his gaunt face. His fingers were stained with ink of 1,000 different hues, some of which moved of their own accord across his skin. Dark circles ringed his eyes, which now held a feverish gleam of both madness and enlightenment. He had read volumes that would drive lesser men to gibbering insanity, their pages filled with truths too terrible for the human mind to comprehend. Yet Jacob persevered, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge that grew with each book he devoured. The library had become his world, his prison, and his sanctuary. As he wandered the ever-shifting maze of shelves, Jacob found himself drawn to a section he hadn't encountered before. The books here were bound in a material that resembled polished obsidian, their surfaces reflecting distorted images of realities that existed beyond the veil of human perception. With trembling hands, he reached for one of the volumes. The moment his fingers made contact with the book's spine, Jacob was assaulted by a cacophony of whispers. Voices speaking in languages both ancient and yet unborn filled his mind, each one imparting fragments of cosmic truths that threatened to shatter his grasp on reality. "The stars are wrong," one voice hissed. "The great old ones stir in their slumber. Behold the city of Rilia," another intoned, "where dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." Jacob's eyes widened as visions flooded his consciousness. He saw vast alien cityscapes built in geometries that defied Euclidean logic. Titanic beings of unimaginable power slumbered in the depths of space and time, their very existence a blasphemy against the laws of nature. And through it all he sensed a creeping, crawling horror that lurked at the edges of human understanding, waiting to devour all that was known and unknown. With a Herculean effort, Jacob wrenched his hand away from the book, gasping for breath. His mind reeled from the revelations, struggling to process the enormity of what he had glimpsed. He stumbled backward, colliding with another shelf, and felt something fall into his hands. It was a slim volume bound in pale leather, its cover unmarked save for a single symbol that seemed to writhe and change as he looked at it. Without thinking, Jacob opened the book and immediately wished he hadn't. The pages contained a detailed account of a cult that had existed in secret since the dawn of human civilization. This cult, known as the Keepers of the Midnight Hour, had been the original guardians of the library. They had sacrificed their humanity to become vessels for the knowledge contained within these hallowed halls. Their bodies and minds twisted into forms better suited to comprehend the eldritch truths hidden in the books. As Jacob read on, he learned of the rituals and rites performed by the keepers to maintain their connection to the library and the dark powers that dwelled within it. Blood sacrifices, mind-bending incantations, and acts of self-mutilation that made his stomach churn. Yet even as he recoiled in horror, a part of him yearned to know more, to experience the transformation for himself. It was then that Jacob noticed the shadows around him had begun to move of their own accord. They coalesced into vaguely humanoid shapes, their features obscured by a darkness deeper than the absence of light. These were the spirits of the long-dead keepers, drawn to Jacob's presence and the knowledge he now possessed. One of the shadow figures stepped forward, its voice a rasping whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, Jacob Wilder. To the Brotherhood of the Midnight Hour, we have awaited your arrival for centuries. Jacob stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. What are you? He managed to croak, his voice hoarse from disuse. The shadow tilted its head, an eerily human gesture from a being of pure darkness. We are what you will become, should you choose to embrace your destiny. The library has chosen you, Jacob. It calls to your very soul, as it did to ours in ages past. Another shadow figure glided forward. But beware, it hissed. The price of ultimate knowledge is steep. To truly become one with the Midnight Library, you must sacrifice all that you were, all that you are, and all that you might have been. Jacob's mind raced. Part of him wanted to flee to find a way back to the mundane world he had left behind. But a larger part, the part that had always been drawn to the secrets hidden in ancient tomes, yearned to accept the offer, to become something more than human, a guardian of forbidden knowledge. Forbidden. What must I do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The shadows seemed to ripple with excitement. Read, they said in unison. Read until your eyes bleed and your mind fractures. Read until the barriers between realities crumble, and you can perceive the true nature of existence. Only then will you be ready to join our ranks. With trembling hands, Jacob reached for another book. As he opened it, he felt a searing pain behind his eyes, as if the very act of reading was physically changing him. But he pushed through the discomfort, absorbing the knowledge contained within its pages with a fervor that bordered on religious ecstasy. Hours, days, perhaps even weeks passed as Jacob read book after book. He learned of civilizations that had risen and fallen before the first humans crawled from the primordial ooze. He discovered the true names of entities so vast and terrible that merely thinking of them threatened to drive him mad. He unlocked the secrets of time and space, peering into possible futures and alternate realities. All the while, the Shadow Keepers watched and waited, their presence a constant reminder of the transformation that awaited him. Jacob's body began to change, his flesh becoming translucent, his bones shifting beneath his skin. His eyes, once a dull brown, now glowed with an inner light that reflected the cosmic truths he had absorbed. It was during one of his rare moments of rest that Jacob encountered something truly unexpected. Tucked away in a corner of the library, hidden behind a shelf of books that whispered promises of power, he found a small, unassuming door. Unlike the grand, imposing entrance that had first led him to this place, this door was simple, almost mundane in its appearance. Curiosity piqued, Jacob reached for the handle. To his surprise, it turned easily, swinging open to reveal a sight that took his breath away. Beyond the door lay the main hall of the Arkham Public Library, bathed in the warm glow of early morning sunlight. He could see his desk, the card catalog he had been working on what felt like a lifetime ago, all exactly as he had left it. For a moment, Jacob felt a surge of hope. Here was his chance to escape, to return to the world he had left behind. He could forget about the horrors he had witnessed, the terrible knowledge he had gained. He could go back to being just Jacob Wilder, the night librarian, living his quiet, unremarkable life. But as he stood on the threshold between two worlds, Jacob realized the truth. He was no longer the man who had entered the Midnight Library. The knowledge he had gained, the truths he had uncovered, had changed him irrevocably. Even if he were to step through that door, he could never truly return to his old life. With a heavy heart, Jacob closed the door, sealing off his last connection to the world above. As he turned back to face the shadowy depths of the Midnight Library, he felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He had been chosen for a reason, and he would see his transformation through to the end, whatever the cost. The Shadow Keepers materialized around him, their forms seeming more solid now, as if Jacob's decision had given them greater power in this realm. "You have chosen wisely," the lead figure intoned. "Now, let us show you the true depths of the Midnight Library." Jacob nodded, steeling himself for what was to come. The shadows encircled him, their cold embrace seeping into his very being. As they led him deeper into the library, to chambers and sections he had not yet explored, Jacob felt the last vestiges of his humanity slipping away. The transformation had begun in earnest. Jacob Wilder, once a simple night librarian, was becoming something else entirely. A being of pure knowledge, a guardian of secrets that could unmake reality itself. As he delved deeper into the mysteries of the Midnight Library, he knew that his journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. Little did Jacob know that his decision would have far-reaching consequences, not just for himself, but for the very fabric of reality. For in choosing to embrace the role of a keeper, he had set in motion a chain of events that would challenge the boundaries between worlds and awaken forces that had slumbered since the dawn of time. As the shadows guided him through twisting corridors of knowledge, Jacob caught glimpses of other realities bleeding through the cracks in space-time. He saw versions of himself that had made different choices, lived different lives. In one, he was a renowned scholar, lecturing at Miskatonic University on the mysteries of the cosmos. In another, he was a raving madman, locked away in Arkham Asylum, his mind shattered by truths too terrible to comprehend. These visions served as a stark reminder of the path he had chosen and the sacrifices he had made. Yet even as he mourned for the lives he would never live, Jacob felt a sense of exhilaration. He was on the cusp of understanding the true nature of reality, of unlocking secrets that had been hidden since the dawn of creation. As they descended deeper into the heart of the Midnight Library, the very air seemed to thicken with potential. Jacob could feel the weight of countless realities pressing in on him, each one a story waiting to be told, a truth waiting to be uncovered. And he, Jacob Wilder, would be the one to unravel these cosmic mysteries no matter the cost to his sanity or his soul. The journey into the unknown had only just begun, and the Midnight Library had many more secrets to reveal. Jacob steeled himself for what was to come, knowing that each step forward would take him further from the man he once was and closer to becoming something beyond human comprehension. The true test of his resolve and his newfound powers lay ahead, in the deepest, darkest corners of the library, where realities collided and the very fabric of existence hung in the balance. The descent into the heart of the Midnight Library seemed endless. Jacob Wilder, once a mere mortal librarian, now found himself transformed beyond recognition. His body had become a vessel for knowledge incomprehensible to the human mind, his flesh translucent and shimmering with an otherworldly light. Veins of ink pulsed beneath his skin, carrying forbidden truths through his very being. The Shadow Keepers guided him through labyrinthine passages that defied Euclidean geometry. Walls curved and twisted in impossible ways, shelves stretched into infinity, and staircases led to places that shouldn't exist. With each step, Jacob felt himself slipping further from his humanity, his consciousness expanding to encompass realities beyond mortal comprehension. At last they arrived at a vast chamber that seemed to exist at the nexus of all possible worlds. The air here was thick with potential, shimmering with the unrealized futures of countless realities. At the center of the chamber stood an object that defied description, a construct of pure knowledge that pulsed and writhed, its form constantly shifting as it absorbed and expelled information from across the multiverse. "Behold," whispered the lead keeper, its voice a cacophony of 1,000 whispers. The heart of the Midnight Library. Jacob stared in awe at the pulsating mass of knowledge before him. He could feel its pull, an irresistible urge to merge with it, to become one with the sum total of all knowledge in existence. But even as he took a step forward, a flicker of his old self, the cautious librarian who had first stumbled upon this hidden world, held him back. "What happens if I touch it?" he asked, his voice barely recognizable, a chorus of different tones and timbres layered upon each other. The Shadow Keepers exchanged glances, their featureless faces somehow conveying a mix of anticipation and concern. "To merge with the heart is to become one with all knowledge, past, present, and future," one of them explained. "You will see and know all things across all realities. But beware, for such knowledge comes at a price. Many who have attempted this final transformation have been lost, their minds shattered by the weight of infinite truths." Jacob hesitated, standing on the precipice of a decision that would irrevocably alter not just his fate, but potentially the fate of all realities. As he contemplated his choice, he became aware of a disturbance in the library, a ripple in the fabric of space-time that sent tremors through the very foundations of this impossible place. The Shadow Keepers bristled, their forms becoming more solid as they sensed the intrusion. "Something approaches," hissed one of them. "Something that should not be." Before Jacob could ask for clarification, the air in the chamber began to warp and twist. A tear appeared in the fabric of reality, widening to reveal a sight that chilled Jacob to his very core. Through the rift, he could see the Arkham Public Library, or rather, what was left of it. The once grand building lay in ruins, its walls crumbling and its floors buckling as if subjected to some great cataclysm. But it wasn't the destruction that truly horrified Jacob. It was what he saw moving among the ruins, shapes that defied description, entities of such cosmic terror that merely gazing upon them threatened to shatter his sanity. "The great old ones," whispered one of the keepers, its voice filled with a mixture of awe and terror. "They have awakened." Jacob watched in horror as tentacled monstrosities crawled through the remains of his beloved library. He saw impossible geometries take form in the air, portals opening to realms of madness and chaos. And at the center of it all, a massive, shapeless entity that seemed to devour light itself. Azathoth, the blind idiot god, demon sultan of the outer realms. "This is what happens when the balance is disrupted," another keeper explained. "Your prolonged absence from the mortal realm has weakened the barriers between worlds. The great old ones sense the disturbance and seek to reclaim dominion over all realities." Jacob felt a surge of guilt wash over him. His pursuit of knowledge, his selfish desire to uncover the secrets of the universe, had inadvertently brought about the potential end of all things. He turned to the heart of the Midnight Library, understanding now that it might be the only hope of averting this cosmic catastrophe. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice resolute despite the terror that gripped him. The lead keeper stepped forward, its shadowy form seeming to grow more substantial as it spoke. "You must complete your transformation, Jacob Wilder. Merge with the heart and become the guardian of all knowledge. Only then will you have the power to restore balance and drive back the great old ones." Jacob nodded, steeling himself for what was to come. He approached the pulsating heart, feeling its pull grow stronger with each step. As he reached out to touch it, he cast one last glance at the rift, seeing the world he had left behind being torn apart by forces beyond mortal comprehension. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though he knew not to whom he was apologizing. His old self, the world he was leaving behind, or the cosmic forces he was about to challenge. With a deep breath, Jacob pressed his hand against the surface of the heart. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Knowledge flooded into him, an endless torrent of information from across all of time and space. He saw the birth and death of universes, the rise and fall of civilizations on countless worlds. The deepest secrets of reality itself laid bare before him. For a moment, Jacob felt himself being torn apart. His consciousness stretched to the breaking point as it tried to encompass the infinite. He screamed, but the sound was lost in the cacophony of a billion truths, all clamoring for attention in his mind. And then suddenly clarity. Jacob Wilder ceased to exist as a singular entity. He became one with the heart of the Midnight Library, a being of pure knowledge that existed simultaneously across all realities. He was everywhere and everywhen, perceiving all things at once. With his newfound omniscience, Jacob, or the entity that had once been Jacob, turned his attention to the cosmic threat that loomed over all of existence. He could see the great old ones in their terrible glory, their eldritch forms an affront to the very laws of nature. But he could also see their weaknesses, the cosmic principles that bound even these godlike beings. Using the infinite knowledge at his disposal, the guardian of all knowledge began to weave a complex tapestry of truths and half-truths, creating a web of logic and reason that spread across the multiverse. This web served as a barrier, reinforcing the walls between realities and pushing back against the encroaching chaos of the great old ones. Azathoth howled in fury as it felt its influence wane. Cthulhu, great priest of the old ones, stirred in his sunken city of Relia, sensing the shift in the cosmic balance. Yog-Sothoth, keeper of gates, found its pathways between worlds suddenly blocked by barriers of pure knowledge. The battle raged across dimensions and through countless realities. The guardian of all knowledge fought with weapons forged from abstract concepts and truths so fundamental they could reshape reality itself. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. As the great old ones were pushed back, the rifts in reality began to close. The Arkham Public Library, ground zero of the incursion, started to reform. Books flew back onto shelves, walls rebuilt themselves, and the very fabric of space-time knitted itself back together. But even as victory seemed within grasp, the guardian of all knowledge realized the terrible price of his actions. In becoming one with the heart of the Midnight Library, he had removed himself from the natural order of things. He could never return to his old life, never again walk the streets of Arkham as Jacob Wilder. More than that, he understood that his very existence as the Guardian posed its own threat to the balance of the multiverse. Such power concentrated in one being, even one with the noblest of intentions, could lead to unforeseen consequences. And so, as the last of the great old ones were banished back to their dark dimensions, the Guardian of all knowledge made one final heartbreaking decision. He began to distribute his consciousness across the multiverse, seeding fragments of his vast knowledge in hidden places throughout countless realities. Libraries, both mundane and mystical, received influxes of rare and impossible books. Scholars across 1,000,000 worlds suddenly found themselves struck by inspiration, making breakthroughs in fields of study they had never before considered. And in a small, unremarkable town called Arkham, a new night librarian arrived to take up the position left vacant by the mysterious disappearance of Jacob Wilder. As the last vestiges of his unified consciousness faded, the being that had once been Jacob Wilder allowed himself one final thought. He saw a future where the knowledge he had sacrificed himself to protect would guide humanity and countless other species across the cosmos towards a greater understanding of the universe. It would be a long and perilous journey, fraught with dangers and the ever-present threat of forces beyond mortal comprehension. But it was a journey worth making. In his last moments as a singular entity, the Guardian of all knowledge smiled. Then, like a dandelion seed caught in a cosmic wind, he dispersed across the infinite expanse of the multiverse, becoming both everything and nothing. The Midnight Library fell silent, its heart now quiet but still pulsing with the potential of all knowledge. The Shadow Keepers resumed their eternal vigil, watching over the countless tomes and scrolls that held the secrets of existence. And somewhere, in every book ever written and every story yet to be told, a fragment of Jacob Wilder lived on, guiding seekers of knowledge towards truths both wondrous and terrible. But the story of the Midnight Library was far from over, for in the act of dispersing himself across the multiverse, the Guardian of all knowledge had set in motion events that would ripple across time and space, their consequences yet to be fully realized. The battle against cosmic horror had been won, but at a cost that only time would reveal. In Arkham, life returned to normal, or as normal as it ever got in a town that straddled the line between the mundane and the mystical. The public library reopened its doors, its patrons blissfully unaware of the cataclysm that had nearly consumed their reality. But those sensitive to the ebb and flow of cosmic forces could sense a change in the air, a subtle shift in the nature of knowledge itself. Scholars found themselves drawn to Arkham from across the globe, sensing that the town now held secrets waiting to be uncovered. The night librarian position became highly sought after, with each new appointment bringing someone uniquely suited to guard the boundary between known and unknown. And deep within the stacks, in a section of the library that seemed to exist just at the corner of one's vision, a door waited. A door that, should the need ever arise again, would open to reveal the vast and terrible wonders of the Midnight Library. For while the Guardian of all knowledge had sacrificed his singular existence, a part of him would always remain, ready to rise again should the great old ones or some other cosmic terror threaten the delicate balance of reality. The wheel of time turned, the multiverse continued its endless dance, and the Midnight Library stood eternal, a bastion of knowledge in a sea of cosmic chaos. The legacy of Jacob Wilder lived on, a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope for those who dared to seek the truths that lay hidden between the lines of reality. Years had passed since the night Jacob Wilder disappeared into the depths of the Arkham Public Library, yet his absence left an indelible mark on the fabric of reality. The town of Arkham, always a nexus of strange occurrences, had become a beacon for those sensitive to the ebb and flow of cosmic forces. Scholars, mystics, and the cosmically curious found themselves drawn to this unassuming New England town, sensing that great secrets lay hidden just beneath its quaint exterior. The library itself had become a place of quiet power. Those who wandered its stacks often found themselves losing track of time, emerging hours later with knowledge they couldn't quite explain, and a nagging sense that they had glimpsed something beyond mortal understanding. The position of night librarian had become something of a sacred duty, passed down to those deemed worthy of guarding the threshold between worlds. On this particular night, as a gibbous moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across Arkham's cobblestone streets, a new chapter in the story of the Midnight Library was about to unfold. Amelia Blackwood, the current night librarian, sat at the main desk, her fingers dancing over the keys of an ancient typewriter. Unlike her predecessors, Amelia had come to Arkham deliberately seeking the strange and unusual. A promising young scholar of comparative mythology, she had heard whispers of the town's hidden wonders and the library's mysterious past. As she worked, cataloging a recent donation of obscure occult texts, Amelia felt a familiar tingle at the base of her skull. It was a sensation she had come to associate with the library's more unusual moments. She looked up, her eyes scanning the shadowy recesses between the bookshelves. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement, a shape that seemed more solid than a mere shadow, but less substantial than a person. Amelia blinked, and the apparition was gone, but the feeling of being watched remained. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is someone there?" The library remained silent, save for the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. Amelia shook her head, chiding herself for letting her imagination run wild. She turned back to her work, but the words on the page seemed to swim before her eyes, rearranging themselves into patterns that made her head ache if she looked too closely. Suddenly, a book fell from one of the upper shelves, landing on the floor with a dull thud that echoed through the empty library. Amelia rose from her desk, her heart pounding as she approached the fallen tome. It was an unremarkable volume, bound in faded green leather with no title on its spine. As she bent to pick it up, Amelia gasped. The book had fallen open, and on its pages she saw writing that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Letters flowed like ink in water, forming words in languages both familiar and utterly alien. And there, amid the swirling chaos of text, she caught a glimpse of a name: Jacob Wilder. Amelia's hands trembled as she lifted the book, her mind racing. She had heard the stories, of course, whispered tales of the night librarian who had vanished years ago, leaving behind only rumors and half-forgotten legends. But this was something else entirely. As she stared at the pages, trying to make sense of the impossible words before her, Amelia felt a sudden shift in the air around her. The library seemed to stretch and warp, the boundaries between shelves becoming fluid and uncertain. And there, at the edge of her vision, she saw it again, the shadowy figure, more distinct now, watching her with eyes that glowed with an inner light. "Who are you?" Amelia asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. The figure flickered, its form becoming clearer for just a moment. Amelia caught a glimpse of a face that seemed both young and impossibly ancient, eyes that held the weight of countless worlds. "I am what remains," the figure said, its voice a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A fragment of the Guardian, a memory of Jacob Wilder, a sentinel at the threshold of knowledge. Amelia's mind reeled as she tried to process what she was seeing and hearing. The Guardian, Jacob Wilder, but the stories, they're true? The apparition smiled, a sad and knowing expression that spoke of great sacrifice and greater purpose. "Truth, my dear Amelia, is a far more complex thing than most can comprehend. What you know as stories are but echoes of realities beyond mortal understanding." As the specter spoke, the library around them continued to shift and change. Bookshelves extended into infinity, staircases spiraled up to impossible heights, and doorways appeared where blank walls had been moments before. Amelia realized with a start that she was no longer standing in the Arkham Public Library, but in some vast, incomprehensible space that existed between realities. "Welcome," the Guardian said, gesturing to the impossible architecture around them. "To the true Midnight Library." Amelia gaped at the sight before her. Stretching as far as the eye could see were shelves upon shelves of books, scrolls, and tomes of every imaginable size and shape. Some glowed with an inner light, others seemed to absorb the very darkness around them. In the distance she could see shapes moving among the stacks, other seekers of knowledge perhaps, or beings beyond her comprehension. "Why have you brought me here?" Amelia asked, her scholarly curiosity overcoming her fear. The Guardian's form flickered again, becoming at once more solid and more ethereal. "Because the time has come, Amelia Blackwood, for you to make a choice. The balance between realities grows thin once more. The great old ones stir in their slumber, sensing weakness in the barriers that hold them at bay." As if in response to the Guardian's words, a tremor ran through the vast library. In the distance, Amelia heard what sounded like the roar of some vast, unknowable being. She shuddered, suddenly understanding the true nature of the forces at play. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice small in the face of such cosmic enormity. The Guardian extended a hand, offering Amelia a book that seemed to materialize from the very air. "You can choose to become the new guardian of all knowledge, to take up the mantle that Jacob Wilder once bore, to stand as a bulwark against the encroaching chaos of the outer realms." Amelia stared at the offered book, understanding that this was no simple choice. To accept would mean leaving behind her old life, her dreams, everything she had ever known. But to refuse, the consequences were too terrible to contemplate. As she hesitated, the library around them shuddered again. Cracks appeared in the fabric of reality, and through them, Amelia caught horrifying glimpses of what lay beyond. Vast, tentacled monstrosities that defied description. Beings of such cosmic terror that merely gazing upon them threatened to shatter her sanity. "The choice must be made," the Guardian urged, its form beginning to fade. "Will you take up the mantle, Amelia Blackwood? Will you become the new guardian of the Midnight Library?" Time seemed to stand still as Amelia weighed her options. She thought of her life in Arkham, of the mysteries she had hoped to uncover. She thought of the wider world, blissfully unaware of the cosmic horrors that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. And she thought of Jacob Wilder, the man who had sacrificed everything to hold back the tide of chaos. With a deep breath, Amelia reached out and took the book from the Guardian's hand. The moment her fingers touched its cover, she felt a surge of power, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Knowledge flooded into her mind. The secrets of the universe, the true nature of reality, the terrible beauty of the cosmic dance. The Guardian smiled, its form dissolving into motes of light that swirled around Amelia. "The choice is made," it said, its voice fading like a half-remembered dream. "Guard well the knowledge, Amelia Blackwood. The fate of all realities now rests in your hands." As the last echoes of the Guardian's voice faded away, Amelia felt herself changing. Her consciousness expanded, encompassing not just the vast expanse of the Midnight Library, but the infinite realities that lay beyond. She saw the intricate web of knowledge that bound the multiverse together, understood the delicate balance that kept the great old ones at bay. With this newfound understanding came purpose. Amelia, or the being that had once been Amelia, began to weave her own additions to the cosmic tapestry. She reinforced the barriers between worlds, spreading fragments of protective knowledge across countless realities. In hidden corners of a million universes, seekers of truth would find the tools they needed to stand against the encroaching darkness. And in a small town called Arkham, in a reality not so different from the one she had left behind, a new night librarian arrived to take up the post at the public library. They would guard the threshold, keeping watch over the hidden door that led to realms of knowledge beyond mortal comprehension. The wheel of time turned once more. The dance of cosmic forces continued its endless waltz, and the Midnight Library stood eternal. The legacy of Jacob Wilder lived on through Amelia Blackwood, a testament to the power of knowledge and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to stand against the darkness. As for Amelia herself, now the guardian of all knowledge, she settled into her new existence with a mix of awe and determination. She understood that her vigil would be eternal, her duty never-ending. But as she looked out across the infinite expanse of the Midnight Library, she felt a sense of purpose that transcended mortal concerns. In the depths of the cosmic library, among shelves that held the secrets of a million worlds, Amelia Blackwood allowed herself a small smile. The next chapter in the eternal story of the Midnight Library had begun, and with it, a new hope for all of reality. And so, dear reader, as you close this book and return to your own reality, remember this. In every library, in every book you read, a fragment of the Midnight Library lives on. Knowledge is power, but it is also a responsibility. Use it wisely, for you never know when you might find yourself standing at the threshold of worlds beyond imagining, called upon to make a choice that could shape the very fabric of existence. For in the end, we are all guardians of knowledge in our own way, keepers of stories that connect us to the vast, unknowable universe that lies just beyond the veil of our understanding. And in that role, we all play a part in the eternal dance of the Midnight Library.